Pastor George to thinking, well, if it works well for us there, maybe it would work even better at the church. So he's talked to a few people at the church, and then it's gone to, or at least been discussed, with pastor staff, finance, trustees, and ad council. Ad council is the one that actually has the authority to make that decision, but they felt like it needed to have more opportunity for the church to hear about it and think about it and discuss it. So Pastor George asked me if I would be up here today, and I'm here to first tell you I'm not advocating for a solar system. What I'm doing is trying to learn more about the solar system, how it works, how it would benefit the church, and I've been looking into that over the past several months, as have several people, and again, Ad Council thought we should have AmpWorks here. That's the company that we're kind of zeroing in on, and to answer any questions that anybody has. We have several people in the church who already have solar systems, including Pastor George. Pastor George is the only one I know of for sure that has it through the city, meaning their electricity comes from the city. Two other folks have it in the county, so it's with PG&E. My brother has it down south, and they work with Southern California Edison. They all have a little different numbers, but it all works basically the same. And primarily what you end up with is, if you put a system on, we would put it on the south side of the social hall, running that whole building, so it would be facing towards the Catholic Church, which would give you the most direct sunlight. And because it's a pretty tall building, you wouldn't really see it here. You might see it as you're driving up Church Street or some other street towards the church. And so that's the direction it would face. It creates electricity. It's solar. Important point. At midnight, it's not generating electricity. The sun's gone away. Or if it's a cloudy, rainy day, it's not generating electricity because it can't see the sun. But when it is seeing the sun, then it is generating electricity. And virtually all these systems work somewhat the same. What we would have is on our facility here, meaning our sanctuary, the social hall, the Little Methodist Preschool wing, we obviously use electricity. When you generate electricity, part of the reason I'm going through some of this is because I want to find out if I'm right on this one when I'm done. When we generate electricity, our best advantage of that is if we use what we produce. So if we're having meetings, if we're running the air conditioning, if we have a church service, it's sunny outside and we're consuming that electricity. Consequently, we're not paying the city for our electricity. And when we have a meeting at night, other than summertime maybe, if the sun's not out or if it's raining again, we're not producing it, we're drawing it then from the city. We have to pay a small fee to the city no matter what. It's like $25, a pretty minimal charge to be connected to their system. And again, the best advantage for us would be if every kilowatt of power that we used, we also produced, because then we wouldn't pay the city for any power. Now, that's not likely to happen because there's days when, like let's give some Saturdays, there may be nobody here. It's producing electricity, there's nobody here. What happens to it? It goes back into the city system, and the city pays you for the power that you've generated, or pays the church. Now, the little bit of a kicker is, and this I will have to check with the numbers, but the city charges you a base of about 14.2 cents per kilowatt. When they buy it, at least the last time I checked the numbers, they paid you 7 cents per kilowatt. So you see the little discrepancy there? Let's say and let me tell you one other thing I calculated. In April is when this came up. Actually, it was May. Then I took a year's window from April of 2022 back a year and looked, and we used $11,300 approximately of electricity that we paid the city for. Now, remember, when you look at your city bill, if you're in the city, it's not all electricity. You've got water, wastewater or sewer, and garbage is all in that bill. So your bill is probably double what the electrical bill is. So it's the electric part we're talking about saving. So ideally, we would save $11,300 a year, and that would help pay for the system. The reality is, it's not as simple as that, because again, we will use power at times when the sun's not out or it's cloudy, and we pay for it. And we'll have times when we're generating power that we're not using, and we sell it back to the city. But remember that little discrepancy in the price. The calculations I did showed that it would take about 9 years, maybe 9.25 years, to pay for the system. And so during that time, the savings we make would actually go to pay for the system. And after that time, all of that savings, presently $11,300 a year, we wouldn't have to spend money on. We would save that. It wouldn't be an expense for the church. Those people that I've talked to, the couple I know that have it at the church, although I haven't actually talked to Pastor George in detail about his system, and my brother in LA, they all said they got the system and it didn't quite work the way they thought it was going to work. And I said, well, so would you not do it if you were doing it again? Oh no, we would do it. It just didn't quite work. And I'm not sure they understood sometimes that what they were paying to get power and what they were selling it back for were two different numbers. And so that is an issue, and we'll find out in just a minute if the city's closed that gap at all. There are a couple things about this. That's a long time to be paying off that system, 9 years. A lot can happen in 9 years. The other thing to keep in mind is the price of electricity going to stay the same? If it is, it's going to take us about 9.25 years. If it goes up, how many believe your power bill is going to go up? It will pay off faster. So I don't know what that number is. If I were guessing, I would say it's probably going to be 7.25 years or something like that. And the more it goes up, the faster it pays itself off. So if we get out 7, 8, 9 years, whatever, and it's paid off, and our city bill would now be, instead of $11,300 a year, let's just say it doubled. It was $22,600, $22,000. To the extent you're consuming what you're generating, you save that much money. So the savings goes up over time if your cost of power goes up over time. I don't have a very good crystal ball on that to know what that time will be, and I can calculate a lot of numbers, and I did, but because we don't know when you're producing it and when you're consuming it, so how much will you actually use of your own power, and how much will you use of the city's power and sell some back, you're kind of guesstimating those to figure those things out. And so we've got to take our best shot at what that is. You know, Kathy said to me one day, I said, boy, 9 years, that's a long time. And she said, you know what's going to happen? 9 years is going to go by like that. And you're going to say, you know, we didn't put that system up there, and now we're paying $22,000 or whatever dollars per year in electricity. So that's kind of what we're looking at doing. And one of the companies, well, really the company that we've trustees have kind of zeroed in on is AmpWorks. And so maybe if we could hear a little bit about AmpWorks and then see what questions you might have for them about either their company or how the solar works and how close I am on those numbers, 7 cents versus 14.2. By the way, just to throw another little kicker in, the more electricity you use, we all know the more we pay, right? Well, it's a double. You not only use more electricity, you pay more money, your rate goes up as you use more electricity. So it starts at 14.2, you use a certain amount of kilowatts, it goes up to 15 point something, you use more, it goes up to 16 something, so the price of it escalates as you use more.
Yep, exactly correct. So it's a tiered system in Lodi, and it was up until about, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, it was 7.75 cents that they're paying you for the watts that go backwards through your meter. but they've just raised that super recently to 10 cents. So woo-hoo. they're giving us 10 cents a watt now. But Dave's exactly correct. 14 cents is the absolute bare minimum they're going to charge. And so, you know, it's irritating because once you understand how electricity and all that works, basically they're paying 10 cents and it's going backwards through your meter and it's really going right next door to your neighbor and they're charging your neighbor 14 cents for it. Or if, like Dave said, they've used a lot, now they're in a way higher tier. So it's a little bit of a racket with the city and what they're doing. But we'll start off, we're AmpWorks right here in Lodi. My name is Marty Hackworth. This is Marcus Bolanos. This is Mike Favero. We're all born and raised right here in Lodi. All of us went to Lodi High. Mike's now living in Galt, but Marky and I are still here in Lodi. Actually grew up across the street from the Warners, so known everyone around here for a long time. Our company's 5 years old. Mike has actually been installing solar for 22 years, so he's worked for a couple different companies, and now we're kind of out on our own, doing our own thing. We're growing. We have another location coming in LA, and we have another location this year also coming in Texas. So we're getting bigger, but Lodi's our home and our hub, and we love Lodi. We've done a few churches and nonprofits. There's been some new things that come along with that Inflation Tax Act. That Inflation Tax Act bumped the tax credit from 26% back up to 30%. George, it's retroactive too, so that's kind of cool for yours. And then it also gave, for nonprofits, like churches and other nonprofits, an avenue to get the tax credit. So that 30% tax credit, and I've been trying like crazy to find someone to tell me exactly, I've read the code, I know what it says, but we're not supposed to give tax advice, so I really want a tax accountant to say, yes, you're exactly correct. But the way it reads and what we've seen is that they're gonna send a check to nonprofits for 30%. There's a second caveat to that too that won't apply to you guys, unfortunately, but if you're in a lower income neighborhood, they'll tack on another 20%. Yeah, so you could get a 50% tax credit if you're a nonprofit in a low income neighborhood. You guys don't pay any taxes. So they're gonna actually just write you a check back to the church for the cash amount at the time that you close the deal. At least that's what it reads in that tax act, right? We'd love to have an accountant tell us that exactly, but that's exactly what that tax reads. So it kind of makes the savings better, and it changes things. We've had some really good talks. Dave's super smart. He's onto it with all the stuff. He's a great member, and obviously George knows what's going on too, so all of us working together. We're kind of considering, I think now, maybe changing gears on panels. Typically with churches, since you don't get the tax credit, we want to put a really cheap panel up there, so the cost is absolutely as low as it could be. So we've had some other options to help you guys get half the tax credit and things like that, but now this new one puts the full tax credit in play, and I think we've been talking, and we'll continue talking about this. We may move towards better equipment. Better equipment costs a little bit more, of course, but better equipment has a 30-year warranty, and so if the payoff ends up being 10 years, you have 20 years of free warranted power. Now, after that 30 years, the panels aren't producing zero. In fact, the nicer ones, which we may move up to, and I'm sure we'll have questions and stuff about that as we move forward, they're guaranteed to still be producing at least 82% at 30 years. So at 30 years, if they've degraded enough, because that's how solar produces energy, it degrades, right? And degrade's a fancy term for falling apart. So they're up there breaking down and falling apart, and that's what's producing the energy. So how quickly they degrade is super important. The commercial panels degrade a little bit quicker, but they're cheaper, which plays into the tax credit. Now that we have the tax credit back in play, we might want to switch to more of a premium panel, which has a much longer warranty and a slower degradation period. They fall apart slower. So even if we go those and they're at 82%, say at 30 years, and you guys say, hey, we're starting to get a little bit of a bill now, we can come back out and add a few panels and keep you going with free power for a long time. So that's where the savings really becomes astronomical. So the bill, everything that they're saying is correct. There is one part of the City of Lodi bill for everyone to be aware of that solar does not replace. So City of Lodi owns the power plants around here. PG&E owns all the poles. We don't quite make enough power here for all of the residents. So on several months, they estimate how much they're gonna be short, and then they buy that power in advance from PG&E. And you'll see on your bill that has a line item called EA, and same with the church. That's called an energy cost adjustment. And that's them just charging you extra for the extra power that they're buying from PG&E. No matter what we do with solar, they won't take that off the bill. And that's something that we're gonna start fighting with the city council with maybe, and because we don't understand why solar customers should pay the exact same, because we're actually reducing the amount of power that the city has to buy. So it seems unfair to go across the board at the same cost. Also, before we had smart meters, a lot of you guys I'm sure remember, they used to estimate your PG&E gas. And they'd say, oh, based on your usage before, we've estimated it. But then always later there comes an adjustment. When you guess, later there's an adjustment back, right? I've yet to see an EA cost adjustment backwards to us. So I don't quite understand what's going on. Maybe they buy those packs of power and they can't, you just buy it and that's it. Or they're guessing exactly perfect every month. So I'm not quite sure when, but that EA cost will survive. All the rest of the solar, the system size is enough to replace all of the power. Power outages is something important to talk about. We just had the power outages kind of the last week. Something that's really good to know is that was equipment failure at City of Lodi. That wasn't, hey, we're going 100%. We've just used everything and holy cow, we need more. We got to shut people down. They actually had like a third of our grid fail. So that's what caused the rolling blackouts. We've been luckily blessed in Lodi to kind of not really have that yet. Although I would prepare as years go forward for that to kind of be the case as people switch to electric cars and the demand on the grid gets more and more. I'd prepare for that. Good to know also, solar does not protect you from power outages, solar alone. Because essentially, since the power is going backwards through the meter at the same time, the power that you're not using, they don't want to turn off the power and have your solar be feeding the grid and electrocuting the guys that are working on the system out there. So when the power goes out and you have solar only, the power is going to go out here as well until it comes back on. So just some stuff to know. But we haven't had a pattern of power going out in Lodi. It's almost never happened, and it's usually around equipment failures, and luckily not yet towards us overusing what's available. So I think that's kind of everything in general as far as that goes. Any questions for us?
What about maintenance? What do you have to do to maintain these panels?
So there's not that. We're really big proponents of ownership of the system. There's a lot of companies out there that sell leases where basically they own the product. That's really good for contractors. They make a lot of money on that. But the better savings is with you guys owning it. And one of the angles that they use to sell those lease products is, hey, we'll maintain the system. Well, the flat out truth is the panels just sit up there. There's no moving parts. They very, very, very rarely go out. Certain pieces can go out, maybe one of the micro inverters or maybe one of the regular inverters can go out. We come out and replace it for the life of the system. I mean, we're 25-year warranty on everything, 25-year warranty on our roof leaks. So we basically are maintaining the system for you guys the exact same way as a PPA or a lease would, and you're still getting the benefit of the ownership. There's not a lot to go out, and it's really kind of super specific. When we have panels go out, we know it's almost all the time a panel called a Q cell. Most of the rest of them, even the cheaper panels, we just don't see them go out.
The people behind us have solar, and I see maybe every year they have people come out and wash them all off. Is that a maintenance fee? I mean, it's like getting your windows washed?
Depending on where you are, you guys are downtown. There's not a lot of dust going on here. How do yours look, George?
They're a little dirty.
A little bit dirty. Are you seeing that result of that dirt at all on your monitoring?
No, and I looked it up. It was less than 1% improvement if you've spent the money to clean them.
So we recommend, like, if you're out in the country, we have clients that are out in the country next to the grape vineyards, and they get caked on. If it's really caked on, that's going to start having an effect. If it's bird poop, really going to start having an effect. Thankfully, we don't have snow here, really going to have an effect. But light dusting doesn't do much, and we can watch the monitoring in real time, and we actually watch your guys' monitoring all the time, too, to make sure nothing's going out. But with light dust, it really doesn't do enough to make it worth, paying the money to have them cleaned. So what we recommend is like what, Mike, once a year, once every other year, if they're staying really clean, maybe once a year. And I don't remember what the cost is on the cleaning of the panels. Do you remember? Yeah, we would come back and clean them for you. So it's on the mic. We would clean them for you guys for the first 3 years, and it'd be minimal. A lot of times too, what we tell about $1,500 after the 3 years to have them clean. What we tell some of our clients too is if it's really bothering you, go out at nighttime. Don't go out during the day because you don't want to put the cold water on the hot panel and risk it cracking, and you also don't want the sun just baking that on so you instantly have hard water. So just go out at night and wash them off. But it's usually not enough to even worry about it. If you drive around town and you start noticing panels, they're all dirty. They're all a little bit dusty because it's dusty outside, but it doesn't make a big difference.
That is a question I asked my brother. Again, Southern California, and it doesn't really matter, but he's got a 2-story garage, and it's up on top of that he has a solar system. And so I asked him how often he cleaned it, and he said, never. It's, I think he's had it close to 10 years. He said, I don't do it because it's on the 2nd story, and my wife won't let me get up there. And when I actually cost it out, he's a little weird like I am, when I cost it out, I would spend more money cleaning it than I would get return by that differential in power. Let's say he's at 85%, so he gets another 15% in power. It doesn't justify it. So he said, I've never done it. And I can look up there and see that it's dusty, but it hasn't affected it. So, and he's had his about 10 years. And by the way, he was one that said when they were putting theirs on and speccing it out, they were told to expect about 12 to 13 years before it was paid off. And he said, we took it knowing that, and at about 7 years, it was paid off, partially because electrical prices kept going up. So I'm hoping we would be less, but he doesn't maintain his.
Well, and God willing, we keep rain coming, right? Because it's hard for us on the marketing standpoint to get pictures of our jobs. Because you guys see the pictures of the job, the solar panels are beautiful and gleaming bright. That's not reality of every day. But I went out to pick up a final check at a job we finaled out in a campo the other day, and it had rained, and the panels were beautiful. So I took a bunch of pictures. Go ahead.
Yeah, we've had one for about, we're out in the country, and we've had ours for about 18 years, something like that. And it takes care of about half of our electricity, because with the swimming pool and air conditioning and everything. So I figure about half, but I think they're Sanyo panels, I'm not sure now, but they were changed once. We've never ever cleaned them, and I don't see that much difference in the value, because in the winter, it rains and eventually washes it off anyway, and so we have peacocks and everything else, so they get things on them. But the issue we had was having to change the inverters, and we had to pay for that. And so those are pretty expensive. I think they were about $1,500.
We buy the extra warranty so that they're covered 25 years, and we don't charge anything to replace them.
Okay, because that's one thing where we have, but even then it's paid, to replace them, but it just adds on. But they told us it would take about 5 to 6 years, and it took us about between 7 and 8 years at that time to pay it off. But but it's been pretty consistent. The only issue you have to fix the roof. We had to pay to take them off and then put them back on again. So there's another cost there that you have to deal with. So it depends on what shape the roof is in before you put the panels on. That's what
You guys'
I would
roof
say.
is in good shape over there, so that's cool. There is another good caveat about solar and roofs just to know is if you have to have a new roof put in at the same time as solar, then the roof is actually subject to the tax credit as well. So kind of cool, but yeah, there is stuff to know moving forward. Your roof over there is in good shape. We're not roofers, but we deal with a lot of roofs, so we can take a look at it. It might not also hurt, roofers will come out and take a look for free, especially if you tell them that you're going to get a bid and not an inspection. Tell them I want a bid for a new roof. They'll come out and look for free. And I'm sure you guys have members in the church that are roofers as well that might take a look and give us a more professional idea of how much life is there.
I understand that, I don't know if it's the city or who, but they restrict the number of panels, so you can't put on 10 extra, and I didn't understand why they did that, but how does that affect the whole system?
We don't understand why they do that either, because PG&E doesn't do that at all. PG&E, as long as we have, a reasonable explanation for how big the system is, they'll let us go all the way up to, a certain number residential and then a certain number commercial, which no one ever reaches. City of Lodi is very specific. When it first started out, that a lot of people went solar and they didn't have restrictions, and it was good. And then they put those restrictions on them, and for a long time, those restrictions made it so that we couldn't even make the system big enough to cover your bill. And so for a long time, it was always two bills. You'd always have a solar bill and the City of Lodi bill, and it's confusing, and people don't like that. Just recently, what was it, Marcus, like maybe a year ago, they changed, and I don't know how they come up with this stuff, but their calculation is that they add up all of your 12 months of usage and divide by 1,500. They take that number and put it into a really old website that no one uses anymore, and they compare it to the number that website kicks out that it says the system is producing. It's an old rebate calculator. It's really weird how they do it. And Lodi has a two-step process. It's got to go through City of Lodi and Lodi Electric.
So one thing I should mention, the bid that we've got from them, now this was on the original panels that were discussed, but it is over 100% of our annual usage. It was only by a few percent, but
Yeah.
it was not less than 100%. But still subject to that thing, are you producing the power and using it right then? Otherwise, that 100%, because of the differential in what you pay and what you get, is going to impact us. The other thing is the original tax credit was going to be in the neighborhood of 26,000. And there were a lot of issues with that because we are nonprofit, we're a charitable institution, so to speak. What the new tax law is that was just passed is what's changed that. They call it a direct payment. So instead of giving you a credit on your taxes and you don't pay them, you now get a direct payment back for that number. So we don't have to use a middleman and some things like that.
They had some interesting, all this stuff's kind of interesting. I know some of you guys have to get going, but how they used to do it in the past is they would say, okay, you guys are a nonprofit institution, so you can't get a tax credit. So what they would do is they would have a third party buy your system, and then they would split the tax credit with you as a rebate. So now we don't have to do that anymore. Now you guys are subject to be able to get the whole tax credit back.
Are there any other questions out there?
Just one. The other is does Lodi have a time of use increase in rates like PG&E does?
No, Lodi's all tier now.
Okay.
It's
so there's
just,
no-
it's tier.
The more consumption, the higher your tier is, and the higher per kilowatt you pay.
We also want to, if you guys move forward with the solar system, we kind of want to do like a quasi-internal energy audit and just make sure that, when the solar power goes out, especially you guys aren't here, let's get the air conditioner and the heaters, let's get all that stuff kicked down, let's make sure lights are off, let's make sure, that you're using the power when you're here and thus when the solar power is producing so you make the most benefit.
Any other questions?
Oh, I brought the man.
Okay. The question was battery backup, just for
Well,
recording.
for consumption or just for to have the church going when power outages? Oh, yes. The payback on that would be a very long time. Maybe with the tax credit, it might help out because we can add it to the system and it would be total cost of the system with the battery and solar. So it could pencil out potentially, but with the power outages around Lodi, I mean, what are we getting? Maybe one a year, twice a year right now? And the other thing to think, yeah, the other thing to think about too is we could always add it in later too. And you guys could actually get a tax credit just for the battery. So there's two things we could do. We can look at it now and see what it would look like, or down the line. But it depends on what we're trying to back up too. If we're backing up air conditioners, heaters and stuff like that, it would have to be a pretty big battery. And just roughly an estimate for that would probably be about 35 grand to do something like that. You know, to run an air conditioner for this church and the heaters, that's a pretty big load. So we would need at least 30 kW of storage, and then probably a 30K inverter too to run that battery. So we're probably looking at about 35,000 for that. So, yeah. But I think just waiting would be, to me would be the best situation.
Batteries are still super, super young. So we just got back from a giant solar expo last week in LA. There was probably 50 battery companies there, and probably 45 of them are going to be bankrupt in the next, little bit here, because there's a rush to get to the right technology. The Teslas aren't the good technology, so there's a rush to get to the technology. They're so archaic. We basically are trying to transfer from like a wet style, put acid in it for your forklift, to something that looks nice in your house. And these guys are struggling. They're struggling putting all the system together and making the cabinet look nice, making them run correctly. We had a good partnership with a really big battery company from Germany that's the nicest, most expensive one, and it's been a nightmare for us. We actually have refunded customers' monies and bought the battery back a couple times because they're just not there. That new crazy bill that they passed, it does allow the tax credit to be extended for 10 years. So that 30% tax credit stays for 10 years running. It's not going to go down anymore. So it's, in our opinion, unless you're at home and we've got diabetic medicine that needs to stay cold, or we've got a refrigerator or a freezer of stuff that we absolutely have to stay cold, or medicine or wine or something, it's our belief that it's not cost effective. A lot of these wineries have, huge things that they can't have the power go out at. That's a different story. Or if you have medicine that can't get warm, that's a different story. But just the cost of them, the technology, it's just not quite where it should or could be yet. And we've got that 10-year realm, for that tax credit. Our opinion is it's probably better off to wait, and if we really start getting these power outages happening, or you have needs change, then we should explore it then. But we're at a period where they've put all of their R&D into their products, so prices are also high, right? Because they're trying to recoup creating all these things. So as time goes on, the technology will get better. The real players will separate themselves from the ones that are going to go out of business. There'll be much better solutions that are easier to understand. Even to this day, for us to try and figure out like exactly how much a battery is going to save you and what it's going to do, those reports are so hard to get in the industry. We just made a partnership with a company called eVolt, and they're going to actually produce those reports going for us forward, so it's easier to show exactly what it's doing. But for us right now, we just don't feel it's worth the money.
Another question. So let's say we have this system and there's a failure, and because it's under warranty, you're going to fix that. But for whatever reason, it's going to take a week to get the parts. Does it keep operating for the week minus whatever that piece is? Or when the part of the system goes down, is the whole system down?
No, so that technology, that's a great question. It used to be that the inverters were wired in such a way that like if this one got a little bit of shade, it affected the whole system. And if this one went out, then the whole one doesn't work anymore. It's not like that anymore. Now they're all specific. So if an inverter, it depends on what kind of system we went, and that's something to discuss too for the future. But if we went with microinverters or regular inverters, if one of them went out, the rest of the system would continue to work. You'd still have two producing. and they've had some issues with some inverters going out lately, and that was a huge talk at that solar show. So the company that does the most inverters is SolarEdge, and they know people are upset. I think they had an issue with some supply on the insides, because now we're seeing the insides of the inverters look a little different.
Or comments? Just so you know, we actually sought 3 bids. AmpWorks is one of them. There was another bid we got, which was considerably higher, and the third company didn't bother to bid it. We don't know if that's because of the size, maybe it was too big of a project for them, or maybe it's not big enough, I don't know. But so we have a couple of bids.
It could be the size, you know, and it could be the process of City of Lodi they don't understand too. And then, but we've been having supply issues with panels. So especially maybe some of the other guys can't get the panels. I don't know exactly what their deal is, but yeah.
If we go to the better panels, you said it's a 30-year warranty.
Yeah.
What is the warranty if we stay with the cheapo junko ones that we?
I think they're 15.
Yeah.
On the
And
commercial.
what's the cost difference?
We'll have to put that together, because we just kind of started talking about that, and then we wanted to come to you guys. I don't know if we've really put those numbers together yet.
The bid you have right there says
It
25.
was like $3,000 more. It wasn't much.
The ones you show on that bid you got on the bench there is 25.
Oh, are they? Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see what we put on there. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So it is 25, not 50.
The warranty of them staying together is 25. It's the degradation warranty is going to be not as good. They're going to degrade quicker than the better ones. And the better ones, I think we said, was about a $3,000 adder. So it really might be worth considering that.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you guys for having us.
Yeah? Excellent, thank you.
So we will be discussing this further. Like I said, Ag Council makes the ultimate decision, but Finance has talked about it, and there is money there to give you a short answer on that. So we wouldn't actually finance this. We would internally finance this. And the other groups, trustees, pastor staff, they'll continue to talk about it. So if you got other questions, let us know. If you've got thoughts about it, let us know.